But I think that the biggest thing, if you can just recognize that, like, okay, it is a lie, even though it's really hard to just come out of it, that's a first stepping stone.
Welcome to the Church Digital Podcast. Through this podcast, we'll talk about the technological innovations within the church. But more than tech for tech itself, we'll address deeper questions. Is disciple making possible digitally? How should we approach the digital mission field? Can a biblically grounded church operate in digital space? Oh, and where does the metaverse and artificial intelligence fit into all of this? Whether you're a big or small church, the Church Digital's goal is to help churches like yours learn to be a multiplying church, digitally and physically. And now here's your host, Jeff Reed.
All right, hey, we are broadcasting live on Twitch. So now you're going to see me do a stall here for a minute or two while waiting for some people to come in. Welcome to the Church Digital Podcast. We've got episode... Well, dang, I probably should have looked this up in advance. Is it 308?
It's 308.
You know, it's interesting. The guest is telling me what episode we're doing here on the podcast. And, well, he knows better than everybody else. We've got Andy Mage, who has probably edited and produced, what, Andy? Maybe 50 of these?
Oh, since 271 is the last time I or the last number I saw. So what is that, 40-ish, almost 50, yeah?
Almost 50 episodes, almost a year of the Church Digital Podcast has been. God bless you, my friends, man. You know, today we're talking about inner critic, and I hate the sound of my voice, and so man, I pity anybody who hears my voice on a regular basis. And Andy has done a great job over the years producing, and Megan Carter is jumping on the show as well. We're doing a season here on the Church Digital podcast, focusing on digital and mental health. You know, what are the mental health implications of digital ministry? How do we prepare ourselves digitally for dealing with people in mental health situations? How do we protect ourselves from being overwhelmed by some of these things? And so, you know, anytime I talk mental health, Megan's my go-to.
The guru.
And so, as She's the guru. Like, she doesn't. Her inner critic is giving her a fit right now, saying, "Don't say that, Jeff."
Spiral going on up here.
Honest to God, somebody who really understands digital ministry as well as you know, expanding into the mental health situation. And that, man, Megan's the go-to. Megan, forget the guest, Andy Mage. We'll get to him in a little bit. You know. Tell us a little bit about like your background, your story, and how you ended up going down this mental health road.
Man, let's see. I was born on a Thursday. No, I'm just kidding.
It was dark and cold.
How far back?
It's going to be a long show, Andy. You may have to
really
cut a bunch.
That's all right.
Just do it on
I'm putting
like
editing
2
notes
speed.
over here. Yeah.
No, a big part with mental health and my story goes back to my childhood, but growing up, I dealt with anxiety. I later on in like high school, I would say, dealt with depression feelings and going through that. And so that was not talked about, one, in our society, our culture. It was not talked about, especially in the church. And so that's a big driving point that why I've done what I've done. I've learned all that I can learn right now, and I'm continuing to grow in that so that I can help other people that feel like me, maybe felt like you can't be a good Christian, quote unquote, if you deal with mental health issues. And I think today the inner critic is one that we're going to talk about. And it's something that I don't know a person who doesn't deal with this on some level. And it can take you to a really dark place. And we want to work our ways out of that. And so having people that you can be beside, I know for me, having family around, having friends, having counselor, that's walked me through and helped me with this. So yes, I still struggle with the inner critic and dealing with that, but it's a lot better. You have a lot better days than you have bad days. And so that's been like a driving force of learning as much as I can so that I can figure out how our mind works, so that I can help other people. And so now getting to sit across from people and counsel them and walk through some of these thoughts, some of these thought processes has been such a blessing to be able to be like, yeah, I know I was there. I have been there. I still am there sometimes, and be able to sit that and just relate to people on that level. And I think that's an awesome thing with digital as well. We get to do that and be just real with people.
Yeah. It's one of the things I love about, working with Megan is she understands the digital ministry context and has, she's with First Capital Christian, Tyler Sansom's church. We spend a lot of time talking about First Capital and Church Anywhere, the original Church Anywheres. There have been other Church Anywheres that have popped up. Thank you, COVID. But the original, the Church Anywhere. So, but super love what's happened there in the culture. We feels like we'd spend a lot of time talking. I think last week we talked about the culture at that church. And so love it. And so, here with the digital mental health season, we did, an overview with DJ Chong, I think week 1, and he's doing a lot of speaking on mental health. Week 2, we did, John Pyle. The John Pyle. My gosh, I could just spend days just listening to that man talk. Just like sit back, relax. John, just open up a book. I don't know. It doesn't matter what it could be. Read me the preamble to the Constitution and let me just soak in everything that would come in. Like it's just so. I just love listening to him, and he's so. Genuine and so wise, honestly. Like, I don't know why you are listening to my podcast. He's got this podcast called Better on the Inside. And, to be honest, it is my go-to podcast right now. I will, and he's in between seasons, I think. But if I'm listening to anybody right now, it's John Pyle's Better on the Inside. So I am blessed if you go listen to his podcast and go tell John I said hello. Because he is very wise in just healthy you. I mean, he also understands digital and doesn't necessarily lean. He talks about digital culture, not as much digital ministry anymore, but just being healthy in this world we call 2024. Man, it's crazy, and so it's a great place to be. And now we've got week 3, Andy Mage coming on. And Andy, operations director of the Church Digital, director of community for the Church Digital, but Andy's operations with the Church Digital and works with Lux, creative director for Lux. Pastor, yep. Am I getting that right?
Yep, creative pastor.
Yep. Hey, so tell us a little bit. Some people may not know the full side of Andy Mage. Give us a little background.
Yeah, I like Jeff said, I am the operations guy, the community guy for the Church Digital, also the creative pastor for Lux. I've been a worship pastor for 10 years. I was a digital pastor for 5 years in brick and mortar churches, and got a crazy call from God to step out and do this whole digital church thing, and started doing that in 2019 after having been in the worship and tech side for 10 years. And then a little thing called the coronavirus 19. COVID-19 happened, and the entire world kind of turned into digital for a little bit. And so we were well placed at the church I was at, fell in love with all of that. Met Jeff actually before COVID, a couple months prior to COVID. He and I started in a Bible study, which was kind of fun together. And then kind of have just been riding the digital wave ever since. Feel really, really called to digital ministry and kind of what God is doing throughout the internet, literally to the ends of the world, and feel super called to be doing what we're doing here today, talking to a bunch of people about mental health, yes, but also about kind of how we can live into these things. And part of what we do with Lux is Lux is a completely online church. It was a church that was ostensibly started for gamers, but has turned into something completely different. And it's awesome and wonderful. And we get the chance to do the same thing, reach to the ends of the earth and spread the gospel. So just excited to be able to do that today.
Yeah, very cool. If you've not checked out Lux Lux Digital Church, not Lux Gaming Church, Lux Digital Church, certainly check that out, luxdigitalchurch.com. We talk about Mark a lot on the show, and he's been on as well. Good friend towards that. Hey, all right. So Megan, let me get you to set the stage, because we're talking about inner critic. So maybe just even start off and help us by defining what exactly an inner critic, what we're talking about when we say that. Well, Megan Carter, making my life difficult. You got kicked out, but when you came back on, I thought you were good. Let me see.
Do you have in the upper right-hand corner?
You are not being recorded. Megan Carter, jump out and come back in. No, she's right. You are not.
Ooh, that would have been bad.
That would have been bad.
Hey, everybody on Twitch. We're going to soft shoe for just a minute. This is the fun part about
my favorite part of this show right now is the everything is fine in the backdrop of right now. It's
nobody can
perfect.
see that on the Riverside thing. So let me see if I can. I don't think anytime Megan joined. Yeah, so behind me I have this like pixel thing, and it's just the everything is fine meme.
Megan's complicating things. All right, but now we're recording. Everything is fine. It's good. Megan, thank you for notifying and letting me know. I saw it, but I thought it was old information. Do I need to set the question again? I think I did a good job. You can. How's this fitting? Flat cap. Thank you, very flat cap.
Oh, Raiden with a party of 19. Right. Come on in here.
Yeah, very cool. Love that. So talk to us, Megan. What when we say inner critic, what do we mean?
Yeah, inner critic is that voice that's in your head that usually is telling you lies, but we like to believe it as truth. And I have a really good friend that she said this once, and it has stuck with me ever since. Our inner critic is actually, it should probably be called our inner bully. When she said that, I was like, yes, that is exactly what I should call it from now on, because when we say like someone's being like a critic, they evaluate something that's happening, right? But typically those thoughts in our mind aren't just being like healthy evaluations. They become very negative if we let it go down that path. And I think from the very beginning, it's really our inner bully or inner critic is trying to tell us, like, to protect us, like, don't do this because you'll get hurt. Don't do this because this person's going to think this about you. We have those thoughts, which, yeah, that could be helpful if we realize, okay, this last part, the because you're going to have this isn't always what's going to happen. And so that's where we have to realize what's true and then what's the lie. But we fall into that lie a lot and believe those things. And if we keep telling ourselves and keep thinking those things, we believe it as like an actual truth. And that's when it becomes a big issue. And I think it's something that, especially in this day and age, and I think, Andy, you can speak a lot onto this, of in the digital world, that's something we deal with so much because we deal with comparison of other people. We see their best pieces of their life and compare it to our worst. And this is when that inner critic, I think, is the loudest. Yeah. And so I would love to hear from you, just maybe an example or something in your own life that you've experienced that, because it is something that we all deal with on some level.
Yeah, you're spot on there, Megan, where I think it increases day by day in our world right now. And I think, we can talk about the evils and dangers of social media and all that, but that has a lasting impact. Part of the people that we minister to and we get a chance to talk to in Lux particularly, and this is one of the reasons that I stepped out of brick and mortar physical ministry, kind of hybrid ministry, and into straight digital ministry, was because that comparison game is crippling. And I see it all the time with other people, but for me personally, and this is going to sound a little weird, but I'm a gamer. I'm also like a nerd, a hardcore nerd, but I also have this like really fitnessy side. Like I'm a runner, I'm a marathoner. I used to own a CrossFit gym, like all sorts of stuff there. And I'm also like really into tech, and I can tell when my inner critic is really hammering me. I'm very good at compartmentalizing. And when I compartmentalize things, I start to evaluate my fitness plans and I start to look at tech. And those, like, I can tell in my own journeys, there's like a pathway I can follow where I see oh, I stopped doing the running thing I was doing because I wanted to do this other thing because I thought I could get perfection here, because my inner critic was beating me up about something. And I can go through my journals and I can go through all of my my quiet time stuff going back in history. I always keep that stuff so I can look at it and kind of see my own patterns. Again, nerd, data-driven, heavily idiot nerd tech person. And the same thing too, when a new piece of tech shows up, that usually means my inner critic was hammering me. And my wife knows it. Like, she's really good at, I know the cam looks blurry. It's part of Riverside. It's everything's recording on the other side. Sorry, Flatcap just posted in chat, hey, your cam looks blurry. Everything's recording at 1080 60, but the way we're broadcasting, the way we're multi-streaming. So thanks for that, Flatcap. Anyway, Megan, all that to say, it's one of those things that shows up in my outflows in really weird and kind of nonsensical ways.
I think that the weird part, like, we all have these different moments. And I know for me, one of the things that may seem weird to a lot of people, but it's like you're going through the drive-through and they hand you your coffee or your drink and they're like, enjoy your drink. And you're like, yeah, you too. And I'm like, I can never go back here because that's where my mind goes.
Idiot.
I'm like, nope, I can never show my face because they're going to remember that I said something really stupid as I was driving off. Now, is that true? No, but it's kind of a funny way of looking, like, that's how our inner critic works. And sometimes it's a much deeper level than that. Like, obviously that one I can usually let go, but it's a deeper level. So it's one of those things that it can be really strange and weird, and unexpected whenever they happen. And so do you remember, or maybe just like a moment that you've talked to somebody else where that an inner critic popped up like unexpectedly?
Oh, goodness gracious. Yes. Being a worship pastor, I would have to interface and interact with a lot of people all the time. And I remember distinctively. So my wife, this is going to be a weird story, so just hang on with me here. So I was working in New Jersey at a church, and I ended up getting approached. I don't ever remember applying for the job, but I got approached by a church in the Atlanta area to come be the worship pastor there. And so I essentially was like, okay, whatever, prayed through it, went down, interviewed, did the whole thing. That they offered me the job. I accepted the job and moved down. One of the guys that was on the hiring committee was this guy named Pell. Pell was like a 60-ish year old dude, born in Savannah, Georgia, just Mr. Genteel Southern, just the nicest dude ever. And then his wife, Diane, who she was mid 60s as well. And so I met them, hung out with them for a little bit. And after I got off stage, I saw this like beautiful woman walk by, just like drop dead gorgeous woman. And I was like walking up the stairs, this tech booth. And I did one of those, like, where my body kept going, but my head turned. Like, I don't know if you know what I mean. Like, your body keeps going, but your head turns and you just keep like walking. And so I was like following her with my eyes. And it was like, man, I need to see who that is. But she left. And so I walked up to the tech booth, whatever. A couple of days later, Pell comes walking into my office with his wife, Diane, and says, hey, Andy, I want you to meet my daughter. And I was like, oh, wow, Pell, you have a daughter. And the woman that pokes her head around the door is that beautiful woman that I had seen. And the first thing I said was, you. Now, she didn't know what I meant. I knew what I meant. Nobody else knew what I meant. Pell and Diane did not know what I meant. The look on their faces was like, this idiot. We had just hired this idiot. This guy's the one that's leading us on stage. And so, long story short, that woman's now my wife, 10, almost 11 years later. And so my wife, Pell and Diane, hold to the fact that God told them to hire me so that I would marry their daughter, Jenna. But yeah, just me going, you, like it was her fault. Like I was the monkey pointing from Family Guy or something. And so I went home that night and I was just like, you're a friggin' idiot. Like, what are you doing? She was gorgeous. It's like you had never spoken to a woman in your life and you're just and so I ended up running a bunch of extra miles that night because I was just ticked at myself.
Okay. So let me ask, at what point did you tell your wife that story? How long did it take?
Oh no, she was there. She was coming down the hall.
She knew that you were staring. She felt it.
Yeah. Because she had, so the way she tells it is that she saw me walking up the stairs and she was doing kind of the same thing. Now she had her children with her. She had been married. She's got kids previous to me. And so she had two children, hand in hand and one walking behind her. And so she said she was doing the same thing with her eyes. And then, but she had to like turn her head. And so then I did the whole thing. And so later, a couple days later, she came, I guess, I don't know what happened. Like I could have been a divinely inspired thing. Who knows? But yeah, like that's how we met. And like till this day, we tell that story and it's just like, yeah, I was the idiot that said you. And she's like, yeah, I was the idiot that married a 30-year-old with, that had never been married before. And so.
Yeah. Creeper.
Yeah. Creeper. I'm gonna have to cut this out.
Oh man, Megan, for me, inner critic is when I'm reliving a situation, when I'm about to do something, I'll relive a situation where I failed at that before or I did something stupid. Like I'll literally, or even just like I'll be walking around and I was talking about just out loud. I'll like moan or I'll grunt or I'll say like, dang it, or, for no reason whatsoever. And my wife looks at me or, the kid's like, what's wrong, Dad? I was like, nothing. Just reliving some incident from 15 years ago that has nothing to do with right now. But it is just in my head to make me feel this big and just to squash me that I can't do something. And so, that's my walking example. I don't know that I've got the you story like our friend Andy, but that's what I got. I don't want that story.
No,
I've got some of those stories, but that's in another context for a different day.
No, I relate to the stories because we've all been there in different situations, right? We've all looked at our past and been like, man, I wish I could have done that differently. But then we dwell on it. We let it like linger. Turn it a little bit, I'll share with one of my like times that maybe it derailed me. Maybe one of the biggest lies that my inner critic has told me was, I was talking before, like I've dealt with anxiety and that kind of stuff since I was younger. And one of my biggest, it deals with, which I grew up in late 90s, early 2000s. It was not a great place for a female to grow up when your role models were stick figures, basically. And that's what you were trying to live up to. When God did not design you to look like that, that can be really hard. And so that was a huge one for me that I was like, well, I didn't look like these people that were supposed to look like. I already feel, you're growing up, you feel weird in your body, like all these different things. So my image, like my self-image that I had was really, really negative. And one of the biggest lies that I believed for a long time, sorry, this one's it's hard, but it's true. And I know that it helps people, but I believed that like God messed up when he made me. Like he missed something when he was putting me together. And I think that a lot of people deal with that and struggle with that feeling because something feels off, something feels wrong.
Being in my childhood, growing up and feeling awkward and then feeling like God messed up when he made me. That has been the biggest lie that I had believed for so long. It took me until I had people around me. It took me until I went to a counselor for the first time to ever say that. And that was about 3-ish years ago out loud. So for, 15, 20 years of my life, it felt like I was just holding that in, which is not healthy. So if you feel that way, please talk to somebody. I always throw that in, but it's one of those things that when you believe your inner critic, that lie for so long, it's a really hard thing just to like flip the switch and be like, oh, okay, yep, got it. That's not true. It takes some time. It takes work on your part to get there. Takes people around you. But I think that the biggest thing, if you can just recognize that like, okay, it is a lie, even though it's really hard to just come out of it, that's a first stepping stone.
For me, it was like that right there. So I'm going to bring the Enneagram into this, which is whatever, but I'm an Enneagram 3. So I'm a 3 and a 6. 3s, there's a healthy and a whatever. It's stupid. If you've never studied the Enneagram, then just don't, because you're going to get lost. But the 3s are performers. 3s are, we like to be in front of people. We like to present ourselves. And so a healthy 3 is great. A healthy 3 is, I think it's great because I'm a 3. But a healthy 3 is very much a bolstering presence, can really propel a project, can be a leader, can do all these things. An unhealthy 3 moves to a stressed out 6, and a stressed out 6 is very much a they listen to the inner critic. They're getting beaten down all the time. They're trying to constantly work harder and harder and harder to put the mask on to make sure that people see perfection, or else if they see any crumbling, then they're going to realize that I'm as unconfident and inferior in my own head as I'm portraying, and all those other things. And so I actually, back in 2019, I've struggled with that for my entire life. Like I'm a basket case when it comes to all that. Always have been. And I just thought, it was like, yeah, that's me. I'm just gonna have to deal with it. It's one of the reasons that I fell into a whole lot of addictive substances like cocaine and marijuana and all sorts of stuff, is because anytime I was high, I didn't have to worry about any of that. I was hanging out with friends. We were all kind of, blasted out of our minds, and I didn't have to think about how bad I actually was. Well, back in like 2018, 2019, there's this guy, his name's Ryan O'Neill, but he goes by the moniker Sleeping at Last. He's a brilliant musician. If you've ever listened to Grey's Anatomy or ever watched Grey's Anatomy or any one of those shows, those ABC shows, you've heard some sort of Sleeping at Last song. He does all these orchestral things. Anyway, he's also a Christian. And he decided back in like 2018, he was going to write this suite based on all 9 Enneagram numbers. And he put this album out in like 2019. I remember listening to it the first time. I hadn't really been through much counseling at the time. My mom had passed away, and I had started seeing a counselor because of that. And we kind of started getting stuff. And then I got scared and I ran away, and then just didn't see it. And I specifically remember putting this album on, and it was a week where we had just moved to Florida from Atlanta. I had moved. I had thought I had made the complete wrong choice moving my family down to Tampa, and I was just getting the absolute snot kicked out of me by my inner critic. Hey, you're never going to, like, what are you doing here at this big mega church? You don't belong here. You're getting paid to like surf the internet all day. You're an idiot. You're never going to be able to do these things. This is so much out of your wheelhouse. You've been a musician. You're not doing any music now, etc. Just over and over and over. Listen to this album, and he literally on the song 3, and I've got the lyrics pulled up. Like I'm thinking about getting these like tattooed on the inside of my arm. The lyrics are, maybe I've done enough as your golden child grew up. Maybe this trophy isn't real love. And with or without it, I'm good enough. Maybe I've done enough, finally catching up for the first time. I see an image of my brokenness, utterly worthy of love. Maybe I've done enough. And so it builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And then towards the very end, he says, and finally I see myself unabridged and overwhelmed, a mess of a story I'm ashamed to tell, but I'm slowly learning how to break this spell. And finally I see myself. And I remember, and the song is just beautiful. Oh, it's just like this like bone chilling thing. And I was sitting in the van with my wife, and I were coming home from Costco. And for whatever reason, this is emblazoned in my head. I was listening to the song. We're at this stoplight. I'm turning left out of Costco, and I am listening, and I am a wreck. Like I am just like having a breakdown in the middle of the freaking road. And my wife's like, do I need to drive? Like, what's going on? Are you dying? Like, are you sick? Are you all those things? It's like, no, you just, this. And I couldn't, it was like ugly crying. So finally we got going, and I pulled over into the parking lot of a Publix, and it was it was like the first time I had been like super honest with my wife. We had only been like married 5 or 6 years at that point. It was the first time I was super honest with her. And I said like, hey, I need help. Like you have no idea what's going on in my head. I need help. And I got a counselor shortly thereafter that. And that dude, I still see him like every month. I still see him. It was like every week. And now we're down to once a month. Only telling that story because like, hey, if you're struggling with that stuff, go talk to somebody, please. Because it will overtake you and it will ruin your life.
It's interesting how the inner critic stuff it's all tied around you're not good enough. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously we're criticizing ourselves or something within us is being critical of that, but it's that perception. Like I'm even thinking of stuff in my life and that. And, you know, I mean, I was obsessed with football in high school and it went back to my football coach from my 7th grade year telling me, you suck, Reed, you're never going to amount to anything. And letting that just be the fuel that literally, I mean, I know that guy is actually in jail right now. But that actually,
what a role model.
I'm not at all saying that makes me, you know, bitter and like, take that, coach. But I mean, there's a little bit of truth in that. It's like that becomes the inner critic becomes the fuel that drives us at an healthy or unhealthy level, or it becomes a thing that cripples us at an unhealthy level. And so how that balance out is interesting to me. So
yeah, I did a survey a couple years ago, I think, with people online and had 3 simple questions about the inner critic and just saying like, you know, how does it affect you? What like environmental factors, you know, even play into it, people, those kind of things. And it was anonymous. And I think I had like 23 people respond. And I remember sitting in my office and just crying, like reading through people's responses and like what they believed about themselves. And I found it really interesting that it seemed like there was almost like 2 camps of it. You had the camp of like, it's all inward. So it's like how you feel about yourself, what you think like you're capable of, your worth, all of that. And then the other one was how other people view you. So it's outward. So it's how you're feeling that other people are perceiving you, which I thought was really interesting that it kind of fell in one of those areas, like diving down deep. Is it an inner, like you're feeling this about yourself, or is it something you're feeling about how other people perceive you? Which I think that goes back to your Enneagram. Like it's very much a perceived, where mine, I'm a perfectionist. I'm a 1. So it's very much inner. Yeah. So this whole like tech issue is like throwing me off. But there's like inner critic. Let's throw this into the podcast here. No. But I think it's one of those things that a lot of people want to say that it can be like, we can just silence it. We can, you know, let go and let God, just, you know, pray about it harder. I hate these phrases. But all those things. And I don't know that it can fully be silenced because we're human, right? But what are some things we can do to manage it? Like, what are some things you found maybe in your own life? Because everybody's going to experience it differently and find ways that manage it best in their own life. But what are some things that you've seen that can help you or have helped you in the past that maybe can help somebody else?
Yeah, I have 2 big things that I do now. So I read this book by John Acuff. I don't know if you guys know John Acuff, the Stuff Christians Like guy. He wrote a book back in maybe 2019, 2020, right around there, right when I was like kind of really getting hammered on this inner critic stuff. And there's a book called Soundtracks, and it's all about it's a loose metaphor, but it's all about the soundtracks that are playing in your life. And he said, in there, he's very much like me. He's very much a 3. He comes from that very performative background and he has that performative mentality. And he said, you need to name your inner critic. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And so I started getting a list together of anytime the inner critic would say something to me. I had this little journal next to me, and I'd just write down a name, whatever the first name that I heard. And then I whittled it down, and I got it down to 2 names. I got it down to Todd, and I threw Todd away because, like, shut up, Todd. Like that just seemed like a funny thing to me. But the other name I chose, I know we're Christians, but I started calling him Joffrey, as King Joffrey from Game of Thrones. Yeah. Because Joffrey was a little crap bag. And he eventually, spoiler, he dies, thankfully. But he's a real bad person. And so I started calling him Joffrey. And so anytime now, and it's still like I'm still plagued with it all the time, and I get into really bad seasons. Anytime I'm, medication and stuff like that is all over the place. Like also, by the way, talking to my counselor, I got on medication, which super helped. I'm on a little pill called Lexapro. And let me tell you, that changed a whole lot of things for me. But anytime I feel Joffrey kind of creeping up, it's just like, shut up, Joffrey. Go sit in the corner, Joffrey. Go ram a dragon's head into a wall, Joffrey. Stuff like that. And I'll tell him to shut up there. So that's number one. Number two, I have carried with me from the first season of Ted Lasso. I have carried the phrase that Ted Lasso runs around with, be a goldfish. I have carried that with me in my back pocket. I know I'm a Christian, I'm a pastor. I'm supposed to have like biblical phrases and stuff, and I do. But those are the quick ones that come out. It's the be a goldfish. If somebody says something about you, because they're going to, if somebody, like if you say something and you get that moment where you're like, Megan, you're doing the whole like, have a good day. You too. If you do that thing, like be a goldfish, you just got to move on. You just got to like, I got too much else to worry about. I got too much else to be beat up about. I can't be beat up about that. So those are my two.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that phrase too.
Yeah, be a goldfish. Be a goldfish.
Absolutely.
That was actually on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire this season.
The be a goldfish?
It was one of the under $1,000 questions. Like what phrase did Ted Lasso say all the time? And it was like, be a goldfish. And one was like, be a leopard. And one was like, be a fruit fly. Fruit fly was hard. For a second, I was like, fruit fly. No, it's not, because, fruit fly lives for like 2 seconds and dies. Yeah. That's not really the point, but yeah. Goldfish stuck with me. That was good.
Huh.
I think I'm going to go biblical because obviously I'm over here.
No, somebody's got to redeem this podcast. No, this is you. This is your job.
No, I think that those things are so applicable to people. And so, but one thing that I always run and filter all my thoughts through, or at least I try to when I can, is the Philippians 4:8-9. It's whatever is true, whatever is noble, authentic, compelling, gracious, think upon these things. And I love how the Message says it. It says, not the worst, the beautiful, not the ugly, the praise. And I think that's so cool. And it's like, okay, if I can filter it through that, I start to see, maybe that inner critic isn't so truthful, so honest to what's really happening around me. So I think that's been a big one that I try to filter that through. Now, if I'm on stage hosting and telling people all these things, my inner critic is having a whole monologue in my voice. And that's really hard at that moment to be like, hold, please, let me filter this through. But finding time afterwards and be like, okay, that monologue is not true, is not what even God says about me. It's not what my husband says about me. It's not what my kids say. And that was one of the exercises that I absolutely hated to do in counseling. Was my counselor said, okay, go home and write on this card, what do you see when you look in a mirror? And I was like, ooh, no, don't want to do that. But I did it because I'm a rule follower. And so followed that. But then it went on to like, well, what does your husband see? What do your kids see? What does God see? And that's what it all boiled down to. And so I think when you can start to see yourself the way God sees you, that can start to change the way your inner critic talks to you, or says things about you. So that's been like the biggest game changer. And then obviously like podcasts and books and all that is finding. I love to learn about the brain. So as I continue learning about that, that's helped a lot too.
Yeah, of course.
All right. So let me ask this question. Do you silence the inner critic, or does the inner critic words no longer have impact? Like, do you ever actually get Joffrey to shut up, or do you just, ignore him and stick him in the corner?
So I don't think he ever shuts up. And I think that's, at least for me, for my personality style, I never get Joffrey to shut up. I learned how to, again, compartmentalize and put him into a proper corner most of the time. My problem is that it's a very will and energy based system for me. And when I'm running low, if you're part of our Discord, you see I routinely will post the meme of the dude dumping a whole pot of coffee on his face in the bathtub. Routinely, I get like 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and I'm very tired most of the time. And so Joffrey's most of the time has a field day when that's happening. And so that's when I have to really lean biblical and start to actually go, oh yeah, by the way, think on these things. Like, think on the true and the good and the wise and the mighty thing. Like, yeah. Joffrey never shuts up though, for me. And I don't know, Megan, maybe he does for you, or whatever your little Todd is called or whatever. But no, he never shuts up for me.
I think I'm going to name it Todd from now on.
There you go, Todd.
Is amazing.
Todd.
Yeah, it's great. No, I don't know anyone that it completely just silences and shuts off. If somebody figures it out, please let me know, because I would love to to make that happen. But I think it's really just figuring out what is true. What do I believe? What do I kind of use as maybe a warning signal, as a like, hey, I noticed that this is happening and I know where it leads. So things like that. And I think it's hard for me to just like let it go too, just not acknowledge it and be like, oh yeah, okay, I'm thinking that. Nope, just move on with my life. No, because if I don't deal with it, if I don't even just say it out loud or walk through that feeling, the thought, that emotion, then I don't, it's just going to bottle up, and it's going to be pressed down and pressed down and pressed down. And I heard this example the other day, and I've used it with so many people, and I was like, this is perfect. But if you think of like a bottle of soda, so let's say a Coke, like you have a bottle of soda, you can see the Coke in there. Each like moment in your life, so each thought is like you're shaking the bottle just a little bit. And so you shake it, and like a really big thought that can really disrupt your life, shake it a little bit more until you get that ring of foam around the top, before you open it. So if you open that right away, it's going to just explode all over, right? It's going to go everywhere and become a complete mess. And I think our inner critic and our emotions can feel like that sometimes. If we just keep pressing them down, it activates them, and it brings a pressure where if we can just give some time and then open it slowly, you have that little like sizzle that comes out. And that's what we kind of have to be able to do with those thoughts, is let it sizzle just a little bit, give it some time. I know. And then you're able to like fully process it, and it doesn't become a complete mess over like the worst possible place, because that's what's going to happen if you don't deal with it at some point in your life.
Quote of the podcast is "Let it sizzle." By the way,
let it sizzle.
Yeah, let it sizzle.
I was trying to do that short. I didn't want to do it. Yeah. I've used that in counseling, and I'm like, I would bring a bottle in, but I don't want it all over my office.
Smart.
So
yeah, smart. Ants.
Definitely don't
bad.
want to do that. Yeah, it would not be good.
Yeah.
Not good at all.
Yeah.
How often, Megan, I don't know if you can answer this, and I don't want stories, I don't want to violate anything, but I would imagine inner critic is a constant rhythm with people that you're counseling. Like it seems to be like everything could almost boil back down to that. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, I think it becomes sometimes part of our identity, who we are. And sometimes it's easier to not deal with it and process, because it's almost like you have that comfort blanket and you just carry it around with you. And like, that's how you don't know what life is like without having that. And that's scary. That can be a very scary thing. And so the thought of walking into something, or, walking into counseling, walking into those emotions, those feelings, those thoughts can become really scary. And so it's a thing that I don't know a person who doesn't deal with it on some level. And they may not name it that, but it's there for sure.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever told this story, but you just saying that was like, okay, let me tell this. So 2020, COVID's happening, right? And there was, and actually we're going to meet Mindy. It's in a little bit, Mindy Caliguire. She's going to be on a future show.
Oh, awesome.
Mindy, incredible, soulcare.com. She reached out. Now she's not she's more spiritual direction than actual counseling, and her organization does more of that type of thing. But she says, Jeff, you've been doing a great work online, helping all these churches. We were friends, and she's like, why don't we give you 5 free sessions for through soulcare.com with a counselor, meet online on Zoom and just do it for free, just to make sure that you're processing all this well. So I did 5 sessions. It was actually 4 sessions, because by the time we got midway through the 4th one, the counselor had backed me up into the corner where it was like, okay, if I rip that Band-Aid off, if I address the thing that you want me to address right now, I'm not going to be the person coming out of this that I need to be in COVID, because I was using, just my confession hour, I was using my critic as the FU guy in my life, and it was like, well, I'm gonna do it despite you, and he was trying to repair that, and honestly, I'm like, I don't need that. I need to be able to work 20 plus hours a night. I need to almost be unhealthy in the season, and he made me promise, well, Jeff, you're gonna have to get this addressed. And okay, yeah, I'll come back. And they would check in every once in a while, for more sessions. Would you like to talk some more about this? Finish up? No, I'm too busy. No, I'm too busy. No, and I ignored coming back. And in many ways, the crap that I went through in 23, the crash that I had 3 years later, was tied into the fact that I never really addressed the thing that I knew was there. It was lingering. I just ignored it. And ignored dealing with it until it became part of this really big mess of crapola that exploded, and that I was forced to deal with kind of in real time second half of last year. And so, ignoring it seems like, for me, ignoring it seemed to be like, oh, that's the answer. Let me just get past this and just, stick Todd in the corner. Bad Todd. Stupid Todd.
Shut up, Todd.
Oh my gosh. But by doing that, I actually gave Todd more power. It's interesting, Andy. I don't know if you realize this, but I guess early this year, I said to you, I just on a Zoom call with you, and this was, I was on all these meds. My health was not good. Every aspect of my life was like off kilter by some degree. And so I grabbed Andy in a meeting, and I was like, Andy, I just want you to know, like, I just need to tell you, like, I'm depressed right now. And I was like, I'm trying to, and in my mind, there's like, I'm trying to figure out if it's the medicine, if it's the situation, if it's like, why am I depressed? Like, I found myself for weeks trying to figure out and to solve this equation on its own, and for me to justify, so I could put Todd back in the corner and justify Todd being there. And just even putting words on it and saying, hey, Andy, I'm depressed right now. If I'm honest, 70%, 80% of the power of depression left in my situation by just telling Andy that, by getting it out there. Now, Andy told me something back, and it was nice. It was inspiring. It was pastoral. It was powerful, but it was not 70 to 80% of depression's power being removed. Like, Andy's didn't have those words in that 2-minute sound bite. It was just getting it out there, removing the stigma, and which removed the power from it, and at least in my story. And so I appreciate Andy's helpfulness in that. You're welcome. And then, but more than that, like, don't stick them in the corner. Like, get them out while you can, while you have the power of the situation, instead of giving more power to him or her.
Yeah. Or them, that person, that idiot, Todd. I will say the getting rid of, so I've been pretty open with everybody about this, but again, on medication, the medication for me is, there's a legitimate, one of the things we figured out during my counseling stuff was that my inner critic, my addictiveness, my addictive personality is, it led down some pretty dark roads. And the reason that I'm taking, my dogs are of course, barking right now. The reason that I'm taking Lexapro is because what it does is it actually helps focus those things. It helps focus away the Joffreys and the Todds, and actually helps me focus a little bit more on staying even, staying focused, staying with it and together. I first told my counselor, like, I don't want this as a crutch. And he said, no, it's not a crutch when it's a legitimate thing. He said, a lot of times people use medication as crutches, but if you have an addictive personality and you are literally, you had a lot of years with substances inside of you, literally chemicals that were altering your brain. He said, medication a lot of times will help you to rewire your brain. And I'm not going to be on it forever, but I do anticipate being on it for a little bit longer. And I will tell you what, like, I can tell the days when I miss one, not just with depression and all that, but like my inner critic, the anxiety that comes with Joffrey trying to tell me that I'm an idiot, and then I'm too short and I'm too bald and my beard is too gross and I'm never going to be fast and I'm never going to be a good pastor and I'm never going to be a good dad. Like that ramps up considerably.
It's amazing all the different opportunities that we have, like through counselors, through medicine, through family, friends, loved ones, like being able to come at this from different angles, because every person is going to be able to handle it differently, and be able to manage their inner critic, their own mental health differently. And for some people, like you said, like medicine is wonderful. And for some people, it doesn't work as well. So unfortunately, it's a little bit of a trial and error to find what the right thing is. But once you find that, it's so freeing, and it gives you so much more to be able to manage. It's one of those things that, like, for me, I know I will deal with anxiety my entire life. I'm not going to put God in a box. He could just say, he heal it and take it away, but he hasn't. And it's going to sound weird. I'm kind of grateful he hasn't, because I don't like the times that it's really hard to get through different pieces of life or get through different thoughts that my inner critic tells me. But to be able to get to where I am, I wouldn't have went through all the training. I wouldn't have went through the different programs to learn so that I can in turn help other people. If I would have just been healed and like it been taken away, I wouldn't be doing this, because I wouldn't have had the passion to be able to help other people. And so that's been just such a driving force to help. And then I think through of like, when I'm sitting across from people, I always think of, okay, because I've been in that situation. I've been sitting on the other side of my desk, basically. And I'm like, what would I tell my younger self? What would I tell myself? Because that's who I'm sitting across from, is myself before I was able to manage this so much better. And I know my biggest one is I want them to know, and I wish I could go back and tell my younger self, like, you're not alone. You're not the only person dealing with this, because our inner critic loves to tell us that. Our inner critic loves to say, you're the only one who thinks this way. You're the only one feels this way. And especially when you're doing ministry or ministry through, digital spaces, you're the only one that's dealing with this, because you see all the other things that are happening. Like everybody else is living this wonderful life and has all these things. So that's probably one of the biggest things I wish I could just go back and tell my younger self, but now I get to tell other people that they're not alone. Do you guys think of any things that you would love to be able to tell your younger self, or maybe other people listening who are struggling with this right now?
I mean, I would say stop caring. And if I could go back and sit with myself, I would say stop caring. I'm a pastor, and so I like to tell stories. One of the stories that I would relate to this is we had a greyhound. I've always loved greyhounds. I think they're like the best dogs. And if you're not from Florida, you might not know what greyhounds go through down here, but they have literal dog tracks where they take greyhounds they're born into captivity, and then they're essentially given a small concrete cell to live in, and they're let out a couple of times a day to sprint at a thing that looks like a rabbit, and they chase them, and then that's what they do for training. And then they go back into that cage, and then they sit there, and it's pretty bad conditions usually. And then occasionally, about once a week, they get taken out into the dog park, and they then come from the dog park into the dog track. They get put into these traps. The traps open. There's 8 or 10 other dogs around them, and then they run at this thing, and people bet on them. That's just That's right. Dog track racing. It's different than horse racing. The horses are treated very well. Dogs are treated very poorly. The thing then that happens when they get like a year or two old is that they're quote unquote past their prime. And so then they go into retirement. And if you don't find a home for the dog, then they're ultimately put down. We had a dog, Greyhound, loved her. She was great. She had some mental issues, obviously from being beaten and all those other things, but loved her. She was awesome. One thing that would happen when we had her, however, is that she could never forget how to not chase the thing. And so when she would see, we had to, dogs you can usually put on the 10 or 12 foot leads. You can put on a 6 foot lead. They have special leads for greyhounds because they're so fast and so agile and so strong that if they get up to top speed like that. And so if you give her even a 6 foot lead, a leash, she'll snap her neck and she'll die. And so if she saw the raccoon while we were out walking, she would like want to do the thing. And for so long when we had her, I wanted to say, Ella, you need to forget the thing. Like you are in such a better place. Like why are you still chasing the thing? Like you have everything. You never will need that squirrel. You will you have a big bed. You've got a home. You've got people that love you. We taught you how to walk up and down stairs because she didn't know how to walk up and down stairs. Like we've taught you all these things. How do you not see that? And she always still wanted that squirrel. And I would tell my younger self that same thing. Hey, you need to be like the Greyhound, and you just need to understand that like that's not the thing. That Joffrey that's going to chase you down about that one small little thing. Forget about it. Stop caring about it. You don't need that anymore.
Forget the squirrel.
Forget the squirrel, man.
Was it Rocky? Is Rocky the squirrel in Bullwinkle?
Rocky raccoon. Rocky was a raccoon.
Is Rocky a raccoon?
Yeah, Rocky's a raccoon. Yep. Moose and squirrel.
No,
it is. You're right. It is.
It's moose and squirrel.
Rocky,
it's a raccoon. Rocky is okay. Yeah. All right. So forget Rocky.
Yeah.
Get that tattoo. No.
Rocky the squirrel. No, Rocky. I'm looking at Rocky. He's an idiot. He looks like an idiot. I forgot that. Got that big buck teeth. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my take on the situation.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't have a good story like that. And living in Florida, I've never been to a dog track. I second everything he just said. But I do, I gave too much power to the opinion of Todd, of Rocky, of those around me. Like I empowered too much of that in my over my years. So that's probably some of the weight that I'm carried or have carried it literally for me over the years. But and I don't know that I'm better now. I mean, I'm still carrying some of that baggage, but processing through it. But I think I've learned over the years to stick them in the corner a little bit more and discredit them where necessary. You know, when coach tells me you suck, Reed, you never amount to anything, I throw back at him the things that I've done and that I've got kids who love me and a wife and a happy marriage and I love God and, you know, the things in my life that maybe counterbalance what, and, you know, the coach was more alluding to the fact that, you know, I was falling off my blocks, being an offensive lineman and, you know, saying that to a 7th grader may not be the wisest choice in the history of mankind. But, that being said, you know, I still hear that coach's voice in my head every once in a while.
Yeah. It's hard to just completely forget about those type of things. And it made me think of kind of flipping it just a little bit with how we think of a lot of these negative pieces of, you know, we're not good enough, we're not all this. But then I think in the Christian realm, we've been told so much to not be prideful, which that can hit, but also like you start to feel guilty for being like, oh, I've done this. I've done this, and this. And like, yeah, I should be a little bit proud about that. Like, yes, keep it like humble, but to do a like actual evaluation of your life, of what you've done, and being able to say those things. I remember I was sitting with Stacy. We were sitting having dinner, and we were talking, and I was like, yeah, so cool. Like, we've gotten to do all these things with church and the ministries and all this stuff. And then I sat, my inner critic was going, stop bragging, stop saying those things. And I was like, I literally stopped, and I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm talking about myself so much, or, you know, I feel like I'm bragging. And she's like, no, like, these are great accomplishments that you guys are doing. And I was like, yeah, they are. And so there's a big balance, because you can go to extreme in either side. And so finding that balance of being able to be proud of what you've done, going back just a little bit to my story of where I felt like I was made wrong and messed up when I was made. And the moment that changed was when I could look in the mirror and I could say, I'm proud of who I'm becoming. And that was the first time I had ever said I was proud, like, of myself. So being able to look at myself and being like, yeah, I'm proud of who I'm becoming. So it's first off being proud because I know God created me the way he did, and being proud of the things that I have done. But then of who I'm becoming, it means I'm not where I want to be. Like, I have a goal, like, I want to get to a certain place, or I want to be able to do certain things, but being able to be content with who I am right now in this moment. And I think that is a big piece that helps silence that inner critic of just that being content with what you have and who you're around and what you're doing, even if it's not where you want to be, even if it's not like you want to achieve all these different things. You might get there, you can get there, but to be able to be content with where you are is a huge piece. And I mean, we see it in scripture that we were supposed to be content with where we are.
Yeah. Wow. I was not expecting to go humility route to land the show, but no, I think that's a good point. It's be content with that. You know, the inner critic almost leans towards pride, right? I mean, that's the reverse side of that. To be able to say that the inner critic is calling attention to what you think you deserve, what you think you want, but you haven't been able to achieve, and being content with where you are and how life has gone for you and how God has gifted you. I mean, that brings the peace I'm hearing that maybe we're looking for. Wow.
Yeah.
Megan Carter landing the plane.
Pastor,
very well.
Dropping it.
Wow. I got to tell you that I'm like, how the garbage are we going to land this show? And she just nailed it. Like, that's a 9.7. Some French judge is holding up a sign right now.
We just got through the Olympics. Megan
very well played.
Megan just gold medaled this one.
Yeah. Look at me, and I just gave Todd a sign to hold up to say 9.7. So even Todd's approving of I approve of this message. Okay, so good. Hey, as we're wrapping up, Andy, any closing thoughts?
No, this is great. I mean, obviously, just for me, naming the inner critic has been huge, and I encourage you to have a little notepad anytime you feel those things, and jot down that person that comes to your head immediately. Is it Karen? Is it Joffrey? Is it Todd? Is it Chad? Is it, some of those names? I don't mean to offend if your name is Todd or Karen or Joffrey, whatever name it is, write it down and then start to put that person in the corner and realize that they are not who you are. That is not who your identity is. Your identity is wrapped up in Christ, not in Todd or Joffrey or Karen.
If your name is Karen,
I'm sorry.
It's in the year 2024.
Andy at theChurch.digital.
Yes. Normally, I'm like, actually, that will go through. It's that email address, even though that's not his real email address. That one will work, so you can email him there too. Yeah. I would, but seriously, Karen's out there, feel free to change your name. Yes. We understand. Yes. And so everybody else, just deal with it. But Karen,
not Todd.
This is not Todd.
Not
Suck
Todd.
It up, Todd.
Yeah.
Come on.
Shut up, Todd.
Actually, at my church, I know Karens, I know Todd, and so all of these Chads, I know Chads, and I'm like internalizing some of my feelings right now. I'm kidding. It's just great. Megan, as we're wrapping up, any closing thoughts?
I think my biggest thing is, like, if you're dealing with any of this, like, talk to somebody, find a safe person. That's literally when I do my podcast. I end every episode, talk to someone, find someone to talk to, and if you don't have anyone to talk to, like, the Church Digital, like any of us would be willing to sit and talk with you. I know I do that online and talk to a lot of people, and just be able to have a safe space to be able to share that. Like you said, Jeff, it does take that power away from that thought, that feeling, that you can start to just take a step forward. And so talk to someone is always my go-to.
Yeah. As embarrassing, as hard, as difficult, whatever your perceptions are about it, putting words on it to someone, it can revolutionize you. And it gives you a completely different outlook and weight. There have been several situations in my own life that just putting words on it, and giving that information to someone to process, it takes the weight off of you. The burden's not there, and it's a completely different outlook on that. So I would encourage as well, Megan, and she's right. The Church Digital, we love to help people process through this. So, I'll tell you what, just even to wrap up the show, I'll give you off my cell phone. Text me, 484-324-8724. If it's US based, +1. If you're international, 484-324-8724. You can go ahead and text me there, and I would love to either help you myself or get you connected with someone who can help you through that, Megan or otherwise. And that's not a fake email account that will work. That actually is my cell phone number. So you can do that.
Not a burnout.
I guess you can call me, but
who calls anymore?
Who calls anymore? I never hear my phone ring. I just don't even know what that means.
We need to do a podcast series on this. How is it that children, and we can end, I'm sorry. How is it that children walking around don't know that this thing is for calling? I'm holding up my phone for those listening on audio, and instead just turn on FaceTime, and they're just walking around with FaceTime all the time. How is that? They just think it's a FaceTime machine. That's all it is.
FaceTime audio is confusing to me.
Yes, it is.
It's like Apple is just flat out breaking the rules of Ma Bell. It's like, no, you talk on the phone. No, you don't. It's cheaper to actually talk on FaceTime audio. At some point, AT&T just needs to stop offering voice services. Andy, I'm glad you brought this up. I fully agree.
Kids these days.
Kids these days, unbelievable. Saint Bear, I didn't even know Saint Bear was in here, man. I'm good. Is Street Bear? I've always thought it was Saint Bear.
No, it's Saint Bear.
It's Saint Bear, right? Yeah. You can't tell. For a year, I've been calling this guy Saint Bear. So don't tell me my inner critic just exploded on me, man. Oh my gosh, I am looking so stupid right now. I don't even know what this guy's name is. Yeah, that's all I got.
Mr.
Man, it's
Bear.
Good to see you.
Yep.
Glad you come on, Mr. Bear. Big Bear. Hey, is this going to stay in the show, Andy? Or are we going to cut this out?
I can do whatever you want, Jeff. I'm your editor.
Man, I don't know. We'll have to. I give the power to you. I'm empowering you to handle these situations. So
I just need
we're
the magic words
play.
for Megan and for Andy. I just need those.
I tell you, you want to do it since you've heard it over 50 times and in editing?
Yeah. Hello, Annikus Cakery. Good to see you. First time chatter, long time caller, first time listener, whatever. Flatcap says stay, so I guess we're going to stay. Hey, we're going to land the plane. So for Megan Carter, for Jeff Reed, I'm Andy Mage. This is the closing of the Church Digital. We'll talk with you later.
I give it a 6.
I tried, man. I tried.
This was rough. You were really good at the beginning, but you kind of tailed off.
Out.